Rain slashed the Glasgow pavement the night the first girls saw him. Late 1976, past midnight on Dixon Avenue, they padded home barefoot with their heels hooked in 2 fingers, whispering so they wouldn't wake the clothes. Under a street lamp, a man stood like a cutout, thin, bald, chest bare above a tight black garment wrong in winter air. When they drew even with the light, he began to shudder without lifting his feet. His mouth stretched too wide, teeth showing, and a high squeal leaking past them. Both girls bolted, keys out, door chain on before they caught breath enough to speak. By morning, parents trimmed the story into something manageable. A drunk, a prank, keep to main roads. The girls stuck to details that wouldn't smooth out. The black, skin-tight clothing, the trembling hands rubbing his chest, the smile that didn't drop when they shouted. Within weeks, a bakery clerk from Cross Hill told the same story to a constable. Late bus home, figure under a lamp, arms quivering, mouth raked wide, a thin mule. She crossed the street. He turned his head but didn't follow. She watched him in a shop window reflection until the corner took him out of the glass. Through winter and into spring, reports multiplied within a few streets. Langside Road, Dixon Avenue, Cathcart Road, the paths along Queen's Park. Women described a man about 50, pale scalp without eyebrows, wiry frame, and a black outfit with a low neck. Some said he picked a pool of light and waited just inside its edge. Some said he stepped from behind hedges as they passed, bouncing on his knees like a marionette working a broken string. He rarely came closer than a few steps and never spoke. Sometimes there was a squeal, sometimes a dry clicking of teeth. The first household call that stuck came in early 1977 from a ground-floor flat. A woman woke to a faint tapping. She lifted the curtain. A face stared back from inches away, mouth dragged into a fixed smile, eyes wide, teeth making a tiny rattle. She screamed for her husband. He lunged to the window, but by the time he reached it, the glass showed only his own chest heaving. Police checked latches and frames and found no tool marks. The back court offered prints too muddled to read. The constable advised them to keep the windows latched and ring again if he returned. He did return, not always to the same door. A nurse walking home after a hospital shift found him standing between parked cars, head tilting left-right, fingers twitching at his sternum. A student unlocking her tenement heard a squeal behind her and turned to a grin set like carved rubber. He bounced twice and went still when she shouted. A young mother with a cot in her sitting room woke to the sense of a person near the mantel and saw a bald scalp caught by streetlight leaking through the curtains. The figure's chest rose and fell too fast. She yelled for her husband. By the time they pulled the curtains, the street was empty and the door still chained. By summer 1977, the South Side had a name for him, the Gurning Man, and patrol cars were told to sweep Cross Hill and Queen's Park after midnight. An investigator pinned a city map above his desk and marked sightings with red drawing pins. The cluster tightened to a handful of blocks: Queen's Drive on the east, Cathcart Road on the west, Dixon to the south, the park's edge to the north. He tried to file the surge under suggestion and rumor, but the consistencies were stubborn. Bald, thin, black tight garment, visible chest, a fixed, trembling smile, and a knee bounce that looked more like a tremor than a taunt. That winter, a constable spotted a figure on Queen's Drive that matched the description. When the patrol car slowed, the man slid off the verge and cut across a back green in quick, stiff steps. The constable followed on foot, torch beam shaking across bins and drying lines, and lost him at a timber fence too high to take at a run. In the soft soil at the base, a line of prints ended at a loose board with a gap just wide enough for a thin body to slip through. On the other side, nothing but a still lane and the sound of a train brake somewhere toward Mount Florida. The winter of 1978 was bright and brittle. The sightings didn't stop. The nurse saw him again, 3 doors from her close. He lifted his hands to shoulder height, as if to show they were empty, fingers spread, grin fixed, chest fluttering with shallow breaths. She edged past, and he pivoted to keep her in view without stepping toward her. She told police she felt watched and, worse, appraised. She bought heavier curtains and kept her eyes down while unlocking her door so the glass wouldn't mirror anything behind her. Habits changed. Men walked partners home. People crossed streets to avoid lamps, where a thin figure stood just inside the glow. Teenagers joked about him until the jokes thinned out. One man who happened to be bald and lean was stopped twice and searched. He was a factory shift worker, harmless and furious, and he started wearing a cap. The investigator kept filing the same outcome. Patrols conducted, area searched, no suspect traced. Summer 1978 delivered the 2 sightings that hardened the story. In the first, a woman switched off her kitchen light, remembered the tea towel on the sill, and flipped the switch back on. He stood behind the glass, hands splayed on the pane, grin trembling so hard the skin above his lip fluttered. She yelled for her neighbor. When the neighbor stepped into the lane with a torch, the window showed only her own frightened face. In the second, early autumn, a young mother woke to a sound like a soft laugh. A figure stood by the cot, mouth stretched, breath dragging as if he'd run a set of stairs. She shouted her husband's name. The figure turned without a step, and the next motion was the curtain rings rasping the rail as the husband tore them open. Outside, empty pavement. Inside, a locked door and a baby settling back to sleep. In 1979, the calls slowed. Maybe he moved. Maybe he changed his hours. A small cluster appeared on the far side of Queen's Park that spring. Torch beam catches a pale scalp, a squeal near the trees, the familiar retreat that looked like gliding rather than running. A bus stop rumor said he sat beside 2 women, hands folded, grin frozen, until the bus arrived. No one could agree whether that one happened. The investigator stopped adding pins and returned to burglaries that left actual marks. Theories multiplied anyway. A disturbed man with a neurological tremor, a fetishist who never crossed the line into assault, a rotating cast of copycats borrowing the same costume, an optical trick of wet glass and hard lamps, faces the brain completes in ways meant to warn, not inform. The file kept its thin weight on a shelf. Statements taken, patrols noted, nothing resolved. Still, the numbers were not nothing. 17 calls with near-identical details over 3 years, almost all within walking distance of each other, nearly all after 10 at night, none leading to a charge. No theft, no attack, no words, only a posture and a sound that made people think about locks. In the tenements where fear hung heaviest, residents added chains to doors and learned to scan glass before lifting latches. Streetlights kept their islands of white. Foxes cried in back courts and startled those who had learned to listen too hard. The Gurning Man never became a face with a name. He left no clear mark and took nothing but sleep. Ask the people who were there, and they'll give you the same points on the timeline. First sighting near Dixon Avenue in late 76. The window face in 77. The heavy summer cases in 78. The spring taper in 79. After that, stories thin out. The grin remains the detail no one can explain. Too fixed to be friendly, too strained to be voluntary, a human expression worn like a mask and made worse by the fact that it never spoke. Thank you for listening to The Lantern's Tale. Subscribe for more true stories, if you dare.